Welcome to Sitting with Shay J, where we share stories that spark change and inspire action. Today, in honor of Black History Month, we're exploring the critical role that Black legal professionals have played and continue to play in advancing justice and equity. Joining me is Crist Whitney, an attorney at Rithad Muhammad High, a firm known for its civil rights advocacy, including representing the family of Elijah McClain in the high-profile case that brought national attention to police accountability. Chris, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm inspired to have this conversation with you because I think it's absolutely necessary. We talk about a lot of things during Black History Month, and Black legal professionals, I think we need to talk a little bit more about that.
I agree.
So first, tell me, what inspired this journey to be a civil rights law? What inspired that for you?
So when I was a child, I had seen the movie Malcolm X, and I've always been inspired to do something in the civil rights field. And to me, it wasn't just enough to be able to, look at the TV, get mad, point, scream. I wanted to be able to do something. And I grew up as the seventh of 8 children in lower middle class family in New Jersey. And I feel like I'm able to communicate with a lot of different people. So I've lived in very poor neighborhoods. I've lived in richer neighborhoods. So I can identify with a lot of different types of clients. And a lot of people that come to us, they come to us at the worst time of their lives. And I feel like my background allows me to be able to help people and to understand people.
I love that. When I think about Black legal professionals really leading the fight for justice, like we've talked about Thurgood Marshall and today's advocates like yourself, what does it really mean for you when you think about legacy? How does that influence the way that you work?
Well, I know that I'm coming from a long line of great legal minds, great legal scholars, and it's a lot of pressure. I don't want to, feel like I'm letting down the community. I think that's an extra burden that comes with being a Black attorney. It's not just us walking into the courtroom. We're walking in there with our history. We're walking in there with our entire community. We're representing something more. So I definitely walk into the room and I want to be extra prepared. I want to know that I'm doing the right thing, saying the right things. It's some pressure that comes with it, but it's worth it if I'm able to help the community.
Absolutely, helping the community is what you're doing. And I definitely empathize with that because we know we have to work harder. We have to show up differently because we're carrying so many people and we have our ancestors that are looking for us to lead the next charge. And then we have those behind us that we have to inspire. When we think about systematic injustice and it remains persistent, it's a persistent challenge. Can you share an example of your work that really illustrates that this is an ongoing challenge that we're really trying to break through?
Well, it's a definite ongoing challenge because the work keeps coming in. It's not like I have a day where I'm not busy, which that's good, but that's also bad because change comes very slowly, which that's definite, very unfortunate for the kind of world that we live in. As a Black attorney, like I said, I have a vast, life experience that I'm bringing in. So, for example, our firm, Rithad Muhammad High, we're the largest civil rights firm between Chicago and LA.
Oh, wow.
So we specialize in bringing suits against powerful actors, whether that's schools, hospitals, corporations, especially the police. And my background allows me, like I said, to identify with a lot of different types of clients that come in. For example, I know what it's like to be, assaulted by the police.
Right.
So I can bring that experience when I have a client that comes in. I've been the only Black face in an office. So I know what it's like when a client comes in and they're explaining employment discrimination. As a student and as a father of 2 Black children, I know what it's like when there's racial discrimination in school and what I need to be able to say to the client. So that I feel like I can bring to the civil rights field, knowledge as well as my background and identity.
Yeah, that's impressive to really think about how you can influence those things because you've been through it.
Yes.
It's nothing like talking to someone who can understand your plight. It's nothing like being able to really unpack some things and feel like you're being heard, you're being understood.
Exactly.
When we look at your firm representing Elijah McClain, we know this was an extremely high-profile case. Our whole entire city and nation was watching this. The conversations behind police accountability and systematic injustice was real. What are some of the lessons that you learned through that experience, or something that you really took away that maybe has shaped some of the work now as well?
That change does come slowly, but change does come. So before the Elijah McClain case, there was no SB 217. So SB 217 eliminates qualified immunity for officers, which allows private citizens to bring suits against individual officers. So that is a change, and that's a very valuable change, especially in Denver, Colorado, where we do see a large amount of police brutality cases, which, like I said, is unfortunate, but that ability to change the law and to be able to bring suits against individual officers is very valuable. So that's one change that I've seen. Also, the ability to be able to help people at their worst times.
Yeah. That's
very, very valuable, because a lot of the times people don't have the money to be able to bring a lawsuit. So our firm, Rathab Muhammad Bai, we operate off a contingent basis, meaning that we don't get paid until they get paid. So what we're able to do is we're able to work for our clients without them having to stress on how they're going to pay us. Ooh. So it's a service that we're providing to the community.
What a beautiful service.
The way I see it.
No, that's a beautiful service, because that is usually where people say, I don't know if I can even fight the fight because I don't have the resources.
Which is true.
And that is beautiful to see someone is there to help in lieu of someone not having those resources, especially in underrepresented communities. We know that we fall into that trap a lot. Yeah. When we think about community involvement, it's crucial really in driving equity forward. How can individuals out there support civil rights efforts and really push for systematic change? We know the change is slow, but how can they make sure they're pushing in the right direction?
Keep using your voice. Yeah. A lot of the times people get very complacent. They're watching TV. They are finding fun things to do. They're ignoring what's going on in the world. Ignoring what's going on in the world leads us to where we are today. A lot of people aren't paying attention to the larger world out there, and not paying attention causes us a lot of harm. And being complacent and being discouraged, like, oh, I have one voice and my voice doesn't matter. Yeah, well, if you speak to another person, now you have two voices. Speak to another person, now you have three to six, and you just keep multiplying, keep saying something. Keep revolting. Don't just accept life as it is. If you want to change something, change it.
I love that. Use your voice, change something. This is why I do this show. When we're thinking about really a firm that's advocating for marginalized communities, and you've alluded to this a little bit about, the process of what that looks like to really help those that may not have it. You're a part of something with a core mission to help our communities. Was that always a part of your plan?
That's always what I've wanted to do.
Yeah.
So before I became a lawyer, I was a hip hop artist.
What?
Yeah. So I used to write rhymes. That's how I started. From there, I wrote a couple books, and one of them was a hip hop novel. The other one was a civil rights novel.
Who would have known?
Yeah, that's
amazing.
Kind of what's led me into law. Because from there, I went back to college. I wanted to become a better writer. So I wanted to write more novels. I wanted them to be better than the first two. And then when I got there, I decided I wanted to be a history professor. So I studied history. And then I took a political science course, and I was writing a brief on the water rights for the Standing Rock tribe in North Dakota. Wow. And from there, I became very interested in the legal process. And everything felt like putting a puzzle together. Yeah. And I liked the research, I liked the writing. And then my professor suggested that I try, going to law school. And I remember telling this to one of my history professors, and she was like, oh, I can see you doing that. And then she was like, it's a great profession. Lawyers make a lot of money. And I was like, oh, okay, And then she was like, well, history professors make a lot of money too. We can buy things like food.
A little water here or there, yeah. No big deal.
Yeah, and then but I didn't really get into legal profession to make money. I just felt like I could make a difference. I can do something as opposed to just watching and sitting back and being an observer. I can actually do something.
what? From hip hop to writing books to law, you're really inspiring someone out there. Now, I know some of my young Black and brown children are sitting there that may not have this example, but what advice would you give them if they're interested in becoming lawyers or becoming a part of the law? What advice would you give them?
Read.
Oh,
Be knowledgeable.
Yeah.
Know what's going on around you. Care what's going on around you. Don't just think about yourself. That's kind of it's an empty life doing that. And if you want to do something along the lines where you're serving the community and you're helping people, yeah, you want to be a little bit more selfless. Kendrick Lamar said, "Turn the TV off."
come on.
And that's a good message. I
Yeah.
think that's something that we should start considering now. Like, turn the TV off, because it's causing us a lot of harm. Because we're not reading, we're not elevating our minds. We're just, it's groupthink. A lot of that, a lot of what we're seeing on TV, and it's dumbing down society. And
Absolutely.
And watching TV and being a part of the culture, you see that it seems that society itself praises the fool and scorns the intellectual.
100%.
And I think that's a good idea, is to turn the TV off and read and do something more productive.
You heard it here first. You don't turn the TV off on Sitting with Shay J or 9 News, but turn the TV off with all those other things, because I think it's so important that we get back to really digging in. I love that you brought that up. I've been being intentional about reading more lately, like, what am I reading? What am I taking in? And we should never stop learning. So I love that that is a part of the advice that you're giving back. As we get to the close of this conversation, I think about just the journey that you've been on. I think about the journey of Black legal professionals. And when you think about that, what gives you hope for the future of justice and equity, and really making sure that this keeps going forward and you can sit back and say, I know we're going to get to a better place?
Well, hope, because I know things will eventually change as long as we keep moving towards it. During these times, though, it's very hard to be hopeful. Like, we're watching a lot of things go on that is very, it's very grotesque, especially if you're, a Black person in America. Absolutely. You're watching, the attacks on woke. You're watching the attacks on DEI.
Yeah.
And we've seen all this before. And it's like, here we go again. Like, we've seen this back in the 80s with welfare. And just the idea of what these word games and these semantics did, because if a lot of people may not remember what happened back in the 80s, where they were, focusing so heavily on crime, what it allowed people to do was become vigilantes. And I remember that case back in the day. I want to say his last name was Getz, but he was on the subway and he killed a Black man on the subway. There's a case recently where someone chokes out a man on the subway, and it's the same kind of situation, and we're, 30, 40 years ago. Literally. So it's easy to get discouraged, but I've seen 2020. Yeah. I've seen what happened in 2020 when people were like, no more, this is ridiculous, nothing, we can't do this anymore. That gives me hope. I feel like people have dropped the ball a little bit, and they're not as hungry and they're not as dedicated as they were then.
Absolutely.
And they've allowed the games from the other side to kind of discourage them.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can fight through that and just keep moving forward as we've always done.
I know if we have drivers like you in the seat, we're in good hands, and the fight continues to move forward. Any last words you want to leave with our viewers?
Be the change you want to see.
Yeah.
I know that's a cliche statement, but it's such a powerful statement.
Yes,
like, if you can change yourself, which is one of the hardest things to do,
absolutely,
then you could change the world around you.
I believe that wholeheartedly. I don't think it's cliche at all. I think it's something that we should take in and really start to make sure that we are intentional about what that looks like for us. Crist, thank you so much for sharing your story, your vital work. You continue to really dedicate your life to justice, and we see it and we appreciate it. Thank you for your persistence and your passion. People out there watching, I hope that you are now willing to speak up to my viewers. Black History Month is more than honoring the past. It's about actively shaping a more bright and future that we can live in and be proud of. So please get involved, support the fight for fairness, and remember, Your voice has the power to inspire change. Keep rising, keep shining. Until next time, I'm Shay J, and together we can create impact. Thank you so much for watching Sitting with Shay J.